Attention musicians, we're about to start talking about work. So before we do that, let's put on some music by Surf Farmer. This one's called Heaven. Welcome to Being Independent, the show that tells you how independent bands do what they do and bring you the music that you love. This show is exclusive on Alternative Twist Radio, and I'm happy to welcome all the Alternative Twist listeners to the show today to hear about rehearsals. The first episode of this show was about songwriting. And the reason I chose that to be the first episode was because that's where the music starts. But the bands start with the selection of instruments and players. There's a lot of opinion about chemistry requirements between players in a band, from some people saying that everybody has to get along like brothers and sisters or we can't make music, to people that say getting along with each other is a wonderful benefit if you can afford it. But at the end, this is a small business and we're just here to create a product and get it out to the people. I started playing in bands a long time ago, as I mentioned, and what I learned in my very first band still kind of rings true today, and that was there are three things that are important to band members, and they are how much fun they're having with people they're playing with, how much they love the music, and how much money they're making. And the band leader's job is to make sure that everybody in the band is satisfying their needs on at least two of those things. The reason I bring the chemistry thing up is because today's episode is about rehearsal. And rehearsal is where we start to see how people really react with each other in a variety of circumstances. In my personal opinion, rehearsal is where you start to see differences between the behavior of the people that you selected to be in the band and what the band leader thought the correct behavior, in quotes, the correct behavior at a rehearsal should be. Let me give you some examples. Are people on time to rehearsal? Are people calling the day of rehearsal to cancel? Are people prepared for rehearsal? Do people show up with all their equipment? Are people set up and ready to go when it's time to rehearse? Are people under the impression that the rehearsal is a jam session or a kind of a party where the band members get together and drink and jam? That was a short list of things that happen at rehearsals, and going back to my chemistry question, if that's going on at rehearsals, does everybody find that satisfactory? Or can they live with the way the rehearsals are going if the other things are okay? If the answer is no, then the band leader has to step up and make things acceptable and productive for everybody there. And sometimes that's a tall order, but that's what they need to do. Let me put on another tune now, a song by Puttin on the Fritz from San Diego. This song's called Powerhouse.
Right down, bumming all night, long haul at the end of the line. So with that.
So sometimes band members' complaints about the chemistry of the band are failures on the part of the leader to properly define what the expectations are for things, especially at rehearsal. And I say especially because rehearsal is a special time when the band is together and they're actively critiquing their own and others' performances without an audience there, so it can be in an effort to get as close to perfection as they can, or at least achieve the vision of the band. It's not the purpose of this show to say there's one right way to do anything. It is the purpose of this show to say there are many ways of doing all these activities that you have to do in a band, like rehearsals. And some methods are more common than others, and some methods are more productive than others. By productive, I mean the band resources that are used in a rehearsal, which is generally time, are used in such a way that it produces a product, an output, that closely resembles the vision that the band had for that product in the first place. So the band needs to start off with a common vision of what their product is. It's almost too simple to say, well, our product is the music, stupid. But for many bands, that's as far as they take it. And I will confess that for many years, I used to think all you rehearsed was the music too. But really, your product is everything the audience sees, everything that you want the audience to buy into. So it's your appearance on stage, the clothes you wear, the way you move on stage, the way you're set up and you occupy the stage, even including your on-stage banter, your lighting, and any other show elements that you use. For instance, if you do your own sound, you should make sure that you rehearse your sound setup. In short, you should rehearse everything that you want to do at the show that you want to go well. As a leader of my band, I spend a lot of time deciding what we're going to rehearse at rehearsal. I try to do this a week or so ahead of time, and I give everybody a list of all the items that we're going to rehearse. In my band, songs fall into two categories. Category one are songs that we play all the time, we know very well, we play them out on every set, and we kill them consistently. We currently have about an hour and 45 minutes worth of Category 1 songs. So at each rehearsal, I'll play about half of them. So that takes just a little under an hour to do. I should mention that we have an agreement in my band that once we've got a song in its final form, the way we want to play it, and we played it out regularly, that we don't change it. We have found it's more productive to just write a new song rather than go back and tweak and twiddle with older ones. The other kind of songs that we have, Category 2, are songs that aren't ready for prime time yet, and we're still working out how they're supposed to go. Normally, these songs came from one person, and then they brought them to the band to be finished. Let me drop in another tune now. This one's by WeAreJackStrong. It's called You Fine People. So while the band has a lot of input on how everything's going to be done, and fills and tricks and surprises that we're going to do together, how each individual's part is going to be performed, the person that actually brought the idea to the band has final say-so in what happened. This is one way that band chemistry really affects the working conditions in a rehearsal. So about a week prior to rehearsal, I send out a list of which Category 1 songs and which Category 2 songs we're going to work on that week. This is so everybody has a chance to prepare on exactly what we're going to rehearse without spending a lot of time practicing things that perhaps we're not going to rehearse. The list is how they know what to practice during the week. Our band records a lot of our originals, plus we record every rehearsal. So if anybody in the band needs some reference to work with while they're doing their practicing, they can use those recordings. I keep recordings of the latest versions of all of our songs in Google Drive so that everybody can access them. As I mentioned, the band writes all the songs together, but the ideas for the songs typically come from either myself or Dan Scott, our guitar player. We have found it most productive for Dan and I to have a rehearsal separate of our drummer once a week, where we just work on the new songs, the songs that we're writing. And in those rehearsals that are just Dan and myself, we just get the song finished maybe to the 80% point, because we want to leave enough room for the drummer to have input and tell us how he feels the song should go. And we record those sessions as well and make sure that they're available to the drummer so he understands the progress that we're making and won't be surprised when a new song shows up on the rehearsal list. And this method works very well for us. But there are other bands that have other methods and feel that their method is best for them. For instance, Jay McGuerty, the very popular band Coastal Groove here in San Diego, doesn't record all of his rehearsals. Instead, he uses charts. I'll let you hear it from him. But how do you guys, when you start to rehearse them together, how does everybody know their part?
Well, enter MuseScore. And
okay. Jay just mentioned MuseScore, MuseScore, which is a free software program that's available to help write charts in standard notation or in tablature.
Particularly for the bass line, I actually work it out, and because Laura is a symphony player, and a very fine one at that, I might add, Palomar Symphony. So when I give her the bass lines, I actually time them out correctly and get them charted correctly in MuseScore, and then I'll actually do a screen grab and drop that into an art program, so I can sort of chop it up and give it to her in condensed parts and say, here's part A, here's the bass line for part B. And it's notated exactly, the right dotted quarter note.
So Jay uses music notation instead of recordings to communicate the structure of the parts to his bandmates, which I completely understand. For me, it's easy to record because we rehearse at my house, where I also have a studio. Jay's band uses a rented rehearsal facility.
We rehearse predominantly at Hindsight up in Miramar.
Which is another choice to make that affects how the rehearsals go. There are pros and cons to all of these variations on the theme, and it's expected that most people mix and match these different approaches. There's also the question of how often you rehearse. My band has a full rehearsal once a week, and then we have the writing sessions with just the guitar player and myself once a week also, so we get together twice a week. I asked Jay how often Coastal Groove rehearses.
Not often enough. I would say we try to do, optimally it'd be once a week and for a 2 to 3 hour period, but sometimes we'll go 2 weeks and then we'll have 2 rehearsals in 1 week, so, and then leading up to a gig, for example, like we're playing the San Diego Fair this Saturday. So we've been heavy on the rehearsals and almost getting in 2 rehearsals a week. I'd like to be at 1 rehearsal a week and always try to rehearse 1 or 2 days before a major gig.
I feel I should mention that Jay recently lost a guitar player and has now gotten a new one, so he's facing a struggle of getting a new guy up to speed, which is always stressful because the band can't play until all the players know all the songs. Speaking of Jay's songs, I think I'll drop one into the mix right now. This one is called Drifter by Coastal Groove. ask some of the same questions to my friend Tom Schwend, who is the leader of the band Surf Farmer. So Tom, do you have a set process by which you introduce music to the band?
Yeah, there's not a standard way. Sometimes I'll bring in a song completely finished and, this is the structure and everything. And other times I'll bring in a song that's only partly written. Hey, what do you guys think of this? And I don't dictate the bass line or anything. I, basically let Donna do her thing on that. And same with Ryan. I'm not really a control person. Just as long as, we all like what each other's playing, then it's good, but yeah, it's I really do rely on the other members of the band to fill it in and everything, and it makes it easier for me not having to really direct that. I just bring in a song and they're able to just pick it up and go with it.
I mentioned that in my band, the person that brings the idea to the group has say-so on how the song goes. That includes when it's done. And I asked Tom that question. How do you know when you're done?
I guess when it stops evolving, when it all fits together. I mean, sometimes the lyrics will change some, or you'll change where you put a part or a break or something like that. But when it's solid, I guess you know it when it's ready.
And that's your decision as the songwriter, or is that a band decision?
I guess if there's a decision that needs to be made, it'd be my decision. But I think we all just know it's ready without having to talk about it.
I got you.
Yeah, we just have that feeling. Hey, that was good. Next,
One of the things I love best about Surf Farmer is how obvious it is as an audience member to see how they get along and rely on each other when they're playing a gig. It's awesome. And Tom kind of addresses that chemistry thing right here.
Well, and I guess that ties in with me wanting to play with friends rather than hiring people or something like that. Because the music is just about having a good time for me. I mean, that's the main goal.
How often do you guys get together to rehearse?
We get together probably 3 times a month, and so if we have a show, then maybe we'll only rehearse twice that month. But 3 to 4 times a month we'll get together. So usually 2 or 3. Usually about 2 rehearsals a month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And where do you rehearse?
Usually at Donna's house. She's in La Mesa, and I actually live up in Julian. So that's a good, hour and a few minutes drive to get down there. So it's, that's one of the things that keep us from practicing more often. But I'm not complaining because it's worth it. It's nice being in Donna's home rather than having to rent a space in a studio or something. And we can just play and have fun. And,
The person Tom mentioned there, Donna, is Donna Daly, who's the bass player, and she handles the booking for the band, as well as, you heard, provides the rehearsal space and many other things. Hey, Donna, can you tell the listeners your name, please?
Donna Daly, D as in David, A-L-Y.
And what band are you in?
Surf Farmer.
Can you tell me where Surf Farmer rehearses and how you conduct a rehearsal?
We rehearse in my home. I have a converted garage that has become a band room, and I keep the set list posted. So we go through, we do not play everything because there's probably 30 or 40 songs on it.
So it's pretty clear Surf Farmer works on a consensus. They look at the song list, and based on how the recent performances have gone, they pick songs that they think maybe could have gone better at the performances, and they rehearse those. And Tom already said that he'll bring a new song to the rehearsal, and he'll show it to the guys, and they'll play through it, and they write their parts. But they also play covers, and so I wanted to understand how Donna would introduce a new cover idea to the band.
Well, yeah, my approach is more, because I am sending songs occasionally. My approach is, would you like to learn this song? And I send them a link to the song, and then I say, perhaps we can jam it at our next practice. And we jam it, and depending upon whether it feels like a fit, and usually, once again, Greg, the guitar players, singers are the ones to weigh in and say, this is not exactly the sound I'm looking for, or I'm not sure about this song.
So both Donna and Tom described this collaborative process where either Tom will bring in a new song or somebody else will propose a cover, and the guitar player, who's Tom, or the new guitar player, Joel, will make a final determination on whether or not the song is going to be included in the repertoire. That's another situation where you're depending on the chemistry of the band to come up to the best decisions. I asked Donna, when you're rehearsing a song and you don't get it quite right, do you come to the end and say, we'll get it right next time and then move on? Or do you do it over?
Right. Yeah, we definitely redo it. We've played a song 4 or 5 times at a rehearsal. We are very, I wouldn't say perfectionist, but I would say we want to get it right.
I'm going to drop another tune in here. This is the Johnny Rock Band playing Technology.
Online, get your fix anytime where you need to go, what you need to know, tickets to the show. Oh, oh, oh. Surfing light speed on the World Wide Web, information highway filling my head. Oh, 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 oh. Wires in the sky, cables underground, fiber optics out, yeah, 5K all around. Oh, oh, oh. Oh, I can't live without you. 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 Technology.
I mentioned before that I record everything that we do because we rehearse here where I have a studio. And the good thing about that is that we have a record of everything that we do. We all are working with the same record of everything we do, so there's no mix-ups that way. But the downside is that I have to record and edit and distribute all the copy, and that takes a bit of personal time. Surf Farmer has an interesting variation on that where the individual players are responsible to develop their own aids, whether that's sheet music or a recording or what have you. Here's Donna explaining.
I record songs on my phone on occasion. So, for instance, Joel tends to write more complicated songs, just as an example. So what he does, which is a great help to me, is when he's teaching me one of the songs that I've never played before, he'll play it once for me to listen to it. Then we play it together and he calls out the chords to me. And I record that version on my phone with the chords. And so in between one practice session and another, I work on what I've got on my phone. Yeah, that's how I do it.
I think of my professional musician friends as all a bunch of people that are dedicated to doing great. And I can't think of anybody I know personally that's more dedicated than my friend Kilian Duarte. Kilian plays very technical metal music, and he's currently a member in the band Scale the Summit, the band Abiotic, and the band Lattermath. He plays bass for each of those bands. Additionally, he's played bass as a sideman for Angel Vivaldi, Neely Broche, and the fantastic guitar player Felix Martin. I knew he was just getting off tour with another band that he's been playing with, Fallujah, and I called him, I think, the 2 days after he got home from their last tour. And I thought he would be a good guy to answer some questions about How do you prepare yourself to play music at a super high level? And I'll let you hear what he told me.
And Fallujah's definitely one of those bands where, I always put 110%. And Scott is definitely one of those people that, prides himself on stage presence and being tight. And that's one of the things that was cool about us, is that, the biggest compliment was not only just the energy, but the fact that we are machine tight. It's technical music, and the thing with technical music, if it's sloppy, it sounds like shit. So we took a lot of emphasis, and it was a big compliment when I came up to rehearsals, because I worked my ass off for 7 weeks on that set. And for music like this, normally it doesn't take 7 weeks, but this music is next level crazy. So for me, it was about 7 weeks of diligent practice prep to get the set where I felt like I could just go into rehearsal and just rock it. Be stage ready right then at first rehearsal. But to be honest with you, when we started rehearsing, we played all the way through the songs. There was no oh shit like that. It's also because we only had 2 days of rehearsals. And it's also, I felt personally a lot of
say that again. You practiced for 7 weeks and had 2 days of rehearsals?
Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. And then you go out on the road.
Yeah, and then the first show. And luckily, because I practice it to the point where I'm not looking at my fingerboard, where I'm I definitely can just zone out. I would say to anyone, you want to play a set, and obviously this is not drink or don't drink, but you want to be, as a rule of thumb, that you could have 3 beers and you could still play the set cold. And it's not an advocacy for drinking. I'm saying I understand. In your mind, that you could literally be that way and you could go on autopilot. And it doesn't matter how technical it is. I think that's a good rule of thumb.
So this is some of the most difficult music in the world to play, I think, at least for me. I wouldn't even begin to try. But Kilian rehearsed the whole set for 7 weeks and went in with the band, who wrote and have been playing this stuff since their inception. And they were able to get by 2 rehearsals and go out on the road and kill it. So that's the kind of preparation that needs to be done. Practice at home. So far we've discussed a lot about the music and nothing about rehearsing your show. So I asked Fritz Jensen of the band Puttin on the Fritz how they practice their show. Fritz's band particularly emphasizes the visual part of the rock and roll show.
Do you rehearse the show staging, how that's going to happen?
Whenever possible, yes. Everybody in the band is starting to practice their stage show. After that first show we did, you were there on that night. I was getting feedback from Chucky at the soundboard, and he said, well, when you disappear behind your little dressing room, the show kind of stalls a little bit, and so I'm working on the guys. We in practice. I just sat down and made up 20 stupid things that you would say, anything dumb. It doesn't matter as long as it's silly and corny, and there's no dead time. You go up to the mic and you say, hey, how did that taste? You want some more? Here's some more. Wow, 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 wow. You look over your shoulder and you see me standing there at the gazebo with my hat on and I'm ready to come out. Then now there was no dead time.
Fritz got some feedback from the sound man after the show about how the show looked. And Fritz took the notes from Chucky and began rehearsing his band in various ways to do a better job of it, because he has a very particular idea of how he wants the show to look, and having a bunch of dead time isn't that idea. I asked Kilian Duarte if he rehearsed stage moves with Fallujah. And while he said they didn't rehearse them, they definitely... And stay independent, people.
Rehearse not so much, but we definitely have discussions of it. So, perfect example is, when the intro music happens, if the stage is big enough and we can be off stage, we come on stage at a very designated time with a certain order of people. So, Andrew will be the first one, because obviously drums, you want to get everyone out of the way, and then it would be Sam, then myself, then Scott, and then Kyle, the singer, being the last person that comes up and hypes up the band right before.
And he also said,
rehearsal, no, but yeah, absolutely. We have points in the show where, yeah, like if someone's taking a solo, like we make a point that the other people like go back a little bit, and certain riffs that are very heavy, everyone headbangs in unison at that moment, and certain hype moments that we want to emphasize with that. You know what I mean?
So if you don't have a Chucky, a sound man you can trust to tell you how your stage show looks, what do? You can always ask your friends who come to the shows, but my friends always tell me that I sound great and look great even when I know I suck. So what else can you do? Kilian told me what Scott Carstairs, the leader of Fallujah, does to get feedback on his own.
Scott has a thing where he twitches. The shows were live on Twitch for his followers. And we'd watch back and be like, oh, you know, it'd be sick at this point in time. We all headbang here at this point. Or like in this point, when Sam's taking a solo, we'll go back towards the drum. So there is actually some coordination, and there is definitely discussion.
So using video for promotional purposes is a great idea, but being able to double use it as a kind of game film so you could critique your performance, your look on stage, and come up with some ideas on how to make better performances sounds like a great idea to me. I'm going to drop a tune in here. This is I've Been Thinking by WeAreJackStrong.
I've been thinking about the time. I've been thinking about my prime. But like you said, the things we dread, they were right there in front of our eyes. I've been thinking you were right. I've been thinking, but I couldn't see the light. We were undaunted in what we wanted, but knowing us, that's no surprise. I've been thinking all along. I've been thinking. Was it you that made me strong? I've been thinking. Good or bad, we wove a web. I've been thinking. Together still, we'll move ahead. Woke up this morning from a dream.
So, as is everything with bands, you can do it any way you want. It just depends on how well you want it to turn out. You can practice the music, get it down tight and hard, or you can be a jam band. People enjoy both things. You can have a completely spontaneous show, you can have no show, or you can have a tightly choreographed show. People like all of that stuff. So you'll find your audience, but it goes back to that idea of having a vision for your band. What are you going to sound like? What are you going to look like? Where are you going to go? Where are you going to end up? What venues are you going to play? Having at least a notion of all those things will help you move forward and will answer a lot of questions about what you should rehearse and what you shouldn't rehearse. What do you think? You can let me know what you think if you write to my email address, which is beingindie2. That's BEINGINDIE and the number 2, beingindie2@gmail.com. I'd love to hear what you think about these shows and what you think about rehearsal. That'll be my feedback so I can make some improvements. I want to thank all my guests for helping me out today. That's Fritz Jensen from Puttin on the Fritz, Jay McGuerty from Coastal Groove, the dynamic duo from Surf Farmer, Donna Daly and Tom Schwend, and me, Gregg Oliver, speaking on behalf of my band, WeAreJackStrong, and of course, Kilian Duarte. Kilian has a number of things that are coming up that might be of interest to you. In August, he's playing with Neely Broche. In this fall, he's releasing a video with Angel Vivaldi. His band Abiotic has a new release coming out. And Fallujah, the band that he just finished an American tour with, will be touring Europe soon, so we wish Kilian a great deal of success and safe travels. This has been Gregg Oliver from Being Independent on Alternative Twist Radio. I encourage you to stay independent and be good at it, and I'll see you next Friday.